Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. This is Ata Mukhtar again with my second session on RICEF stands for. The second session is about workflows. Let's wait for a while so that other people can join in, and meanwhile I'll do what to refresh your mind. I can go a little bit deeper into RICEF for initial 1 or 2 minutes. So RICEF is nothing but just objects which are developed or delivered during SAP implementation from a web perspective. It includes workflow, it includes reports, interfaces, conversions, enhancements, and forms. So, in workflow, what happens is you have a process in SAPs, for example, any leave request, and you want that to be approved by another person for some other approval authority. So he received the request in his inbox and he approved the request. This process is called workflow in SAP. Besides that, there are in reports. Reports are two types of reports. One is classical report, and the other one is ALV report. So both of these reports are available in SAP. Later on, it comes to interfaces. Interfaces is nothing but just connection with non-SAP or SAP systems, where you integrate your objects relevant to SAP. Conversion is SAP provided format of data which you require from the legacy system. Enhancements is improving your processes based on customer requirements and within the SAP framework. When you upgrade your system, it will take your requirement code with it, so it doesn't disrupt your functionality. Forms is any printable form that you have in SAP, like smart forms, Adobe forms, are all part of RICEF objects. Now let's talk about let's wait for 2 or 3 minutes more so that people can join in, and later on we will go into workflow. I'll share my screen as well so that you can see what are the questions being on, what are the things that needs to be understood and done for activating a workflow in SAP. So let me start with 1 minute. Let's wait for 2 minutes. Okay, let me share my screen. I'll go a little deeper into workflow, starting from the requirements that you get from your functional consultant or your client. So let me share my screen. Okay, so that's first we will talk about how the system, how will a client require a workflow, how will it request the workflow. First we'll go into a functional specification. That's a type of functional specification that you will get from a client or a functional consultant. It describes your number, business process number, date, the module that you are trying to work on, description or title. Then it will describe whether it's a workflow or anything else. So it's a workflow. It describes general information. Workflow for payment release will be triggered on posting of transaction fee and will be routed as per the flow chart. Assistant director, deputy director payment will release document for payment. That's the description of the workflow that you get. It also describes how long would it take to activate that workflow in system. Then we will go into little detailed. Assistant director will post a accounts payable document in system. This invoice will be routed and assistant director, deputy director payment for approval and will be released for payment in accordance to the account. That's how a workflow is designed. First, a vendor invoice will be posted in system. It will go to assistant director or deputy director. he will see whether the invoice is correct and there is any error in the document. If he says okay, the invoice will be released and it will go for payment. That is the detailed document that you will get from a client or a functional consultant. It will also tell you what are the transactions that the workflow will trigger on system. It will also tell you the business object which will be triggered for this process. So that's the requirement. Once you have the requirement with you, now you are asked to develop the workflow in SAP or activate the workflow in SAP. So what we will do is we will go through a blog that I've written earlier in blogs.sap.com. If you can see my screen, I'll share it with you here. So in this workflow, what requirement was to develop a workflow for a vendor payments, and that's how we did it. We created a table where we selected some approvers, whether it's a level 1 approver or final approval. Approval can be multiple users. It will loop onto that level until all have been approved sequentially, and later on it will go to final approver, and final approval will approve the workflow and it will be ready for payments. So first thing that we will do is we will create a MRO invoice document in SAP with a payment block. Once this document is posted, it will create a new document in finance, finance invoice for vendor payments, and trigger a workflow with the post event business 2081 business object. Since this event is triggered and a workflow is activated and behind, so a workflow will be triggered. This is the whole design of the workflow. I will go into deeper how it will be designed later on. First, we will go into a process, how the process is flowing. Final approval will accept the decision. The system will take the user MRBR to manually delete payment block voice. When the final approval receives his workflow, he has the authority to go to transaction MRBR and remove the payment block. Once the payment block is removed, finally the vendor payments can be made in transaction F-53. So this is how a workflow is designed for a specific process. Now we will go into deeper how the workflow works. So in workflow, the earlier blog is that I've just explained. It will tell you what the process is. Now we will design a workflow for this process. We will have to activate a workflow for the business event posted of business project business 2081. And in SWDD, when we go to transaction SWDD, we have the authority to customize the workflow according to client requirements. So we go to SWDD, we created a workflow. In that workflow, we activate it for a business object 2081 posted event. And then what we'll do is we'll create a we will check whether the invoice has been blocked or it has been released for further payments. If it has been blocked, we will trigger the workflow and fetch its approvals from the table that we've created earlier, which will tell you whether the level 1 approval is there or the final approval is there. Once it has been approved, we fetch the approvals, we go to sequential block. In this sequential block, we will display the invoice. In the invoice, we will check whether the invoice is correct or not. Once it has been checked, it will go to a release, whether it has been released or not, and then to final approval for removing the payment block. This is how a block is designed. I'm not going to into details how a block will work or what configuration is required to create a block. I'm just giving an example of a workflow so that you understand how workflow is activated in SAP. Now what we will do is we create an activity display invoice decision box to approve the reject invoice. Here the decision is taken whether we have to exit the approval or we'll loop on until all level 1 approvals have approved this request. Once it has been approved, the user approved the decision, it has been removed the payment block from transaction MRBR and workflow will end after removing the payment block. So once final approval receives this workflow, this will go to a transaction called MRBR, where user can remove the payment block manually, and then vendor payments can be processed accordingly. This is how a workflow is designed. For this purpose, you can view my blog. I will share it on the comment section as well, so that you have it with you. This is the blog that I was talking about. Now, let's discuss what transactions are required for SAP to work for workflow. I've got an SAP system. I'll go into SWD transaction. Here, SAP will connect, and it will show me workflows. I will search for my relevant workflow. I'll just give you an example of an purchase order workflow, so that it's easier for you to understand how it works. It's a standard workflow available in SAP. You don't have to customize it. All you need to do is follow the note as SAP recommended to activate this workflow. This is the workflow. Okay. This is a small workflow. It will be triggered when a release strategy is triggered in SAP. And once a user receives the release, it has approval authority to approve or reject it. And then system will initiate a release triggered, and the user has the authority to approve or reject it. Okay. It's a small workflow which is designed by SAP itself. You don't have to do anything. All you need to do is you have to work on customizing it to activate it in your system. This is a release of purchase order. In this, you have a task, release of purchase order, single release, business object 2012. Here you will release it, and then the user will receive request in his inbox, and he will approve or reject the release strategy. So now I'll show you inbox. This is the inbox of SAP, where you will receive your workflow documents. Like this is the example. Purchase order, this is ready for release or released. So all this work items are there in my inbox. So that's the requirement that we've discussed today, workflow. I hope you have liked it, and let's end this broadcast here so that it won't be too long for people to view it later. Thank you very much, guys, and hope to see you again in the next session on another topic related to RICEF. Thank you. Take care. Bye.